Hello, welcome. It's Talking in Stations. I am Matterall here with Ashterothi.
Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashterothi, and today we are looking at a slightly more Christmassy star.
Yeah.
It's good to see you guys.
We're also here with Arsia, also known as Baleful Dysnomia. How are you?
Correct. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. And I am not in front of a star for Christmas. I'm just in the same Keep Star background thing that you are.
You and I are in Keep Star Talking in Stations, and Ash is out in a capsule somewhere. Nice Christmas sweater there.
Yeah, I was informed that now that we have to establish Christmas traditions, so we all have to have ugly Christmas sweaters. And after a lot of evaluation, I Drink and I Know Things was the correct Christmas sweater for me this year.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy with it.
Yeah. Nice. Festive. All right. Okay, well, let's get started. Today's going to be a little bit different. We're going to talk a lot about the EVE Online backstory. Some people call it lore, but it is a lot of the story stuff that comes out of EVE Online, which is some of the most fascinating things. As players interact with it, it actually mutates the story because players influence the EVE Online history. Arsia is very familiar with that. She works a lot with role-playing communities, and Ashterothi knows a lot about lore and has talked about it for many years now. So what are we going to learn about today? What happened?
That's right. So specifically, a lot of people don't really think that there's a lot going on in the lore of EVE, but one of the reasons why is because it's often hard to find, or it's not really talked about a lot. So one of the ways that the lore or the story is kind of presented to us is the scope videos that a lot of people are familiar with. But more regularly than that, we get what's called world news articles, which are usually a series of different kind of news stories from in-universe perspective that offers some sort of insight as to what's happening or lend a clue as to an ongoing developing story. And often these have connections with in-game events and whatnot. And so we really wanted to highlight that today because we got a new one. We got the Yule Festival world news articles. So I was going to read through them one at a time, and then we can talk about what they are, and Baleful can help get us some insight as to how this is kind of spiraled into player, both from the news stories into player action, and then how player action has also influenced the news.
I do want to also say that the news has changed over time. The current style of news that has a bunch of like smaller blurbs about various different things going on around the cluster is a style that's been the case for the last couple years, and I think it is probably superior to the older style where it was you'd get like news articles. It would be like a more fleshed out article on like one topic, but this way you hear about a bunch of different things going on around the cluster, and like the whole cluster feels more alive to me in this style.
The other thing is that the story of EVE, I mean, like the EVE is a living universe, and so things take time to play out. So it isn't like we suddenly like read an entire book and it's the entire plot from beginning to end of some machinations. So what we'll see here is some seeds for future stuff that we might see in the game or just in the story. And we're also going to see developments of stuff that's been going on for over 3 years. So without further ado, I think we can jump into the first one, right?
Yeah. I was just going to say that a lot of this stuff also has to do with how the players react to it. You did cover that, yeah, players interact with this stuff, but that's one of the reasons why it goes on over time, because it reacts to players. Like one of the articles we'll see today was simply came out of being because somebody made a post on the in-character section of the official message board.
So without further ado, we'll jump into it. The first news story says, volatile ice storms sweep across New Eden as Yule Festival season begins. Yuli Genesis. Concord has issued general advisory notices warning of the hazards of large number of vast volatile ice storms that are sweeping across New Eden. The SEC is recommending civilian cargo and transport traffic take alternative routes when possible. The Directive Enforcement Department has also noted the presence of Sancha Nation forces seeking to exploit the resources that can be discovered in volatile ice deposits occurring in the form of metallimital storm. For its part, OR's Frostline Laboratory Division has taken the opportunity to further test its latest filament transport technology prototypes by making them available to capsuleers. Frostline Research and Development has focused on the filament technology with a view to its potential use in resource exploitation in recent years. A recently filed financial report indicates Frostline is researching filament guidance using the space-time anomalies that metaliminal storms are believed to be formed around. Since their emergence in August of YC122, most research into metaliminal storms has indicated that they are associated with changes to the local cluster's space-time topology caused by Triglavian stellar manipulation. Certain storms appear to represent a leakage of abyssal dead space environment radiation and particles into normal space. However, Frostline theorists are suggesting that the ice storms may represent a localized reduction in thermal energy, potentially caused by the energy draining into abyssal dead space through quadrillions of microscopic wormholes. The DED is supporting the elimination of the Sanchez Nation White Storm fleet by capsuleers, with its own patrol forces overstretched by the increase in space traffic as the Yule Festival season begins. Edencom's planetary fortification programs continue to enhance the security of population centers, and the Aegis forces are on alert for possible Sanchez Nation planetary raids. So there you go. That's why there's snow in space, guys. They did it. They explained it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So basically, what it's suggesting is what you see as those snowflakes drifting along are basically microscopic wormholes. You poke enough holes between our world and Abyss, and just like the chaotic wormholes are just random versions of what the Talican did with W477 Type P when they created Noikis. That wasn't explained as IS-5, but whatever. So too, like if you punch a bunch of holes, things sift down. So now, like the very thermal energy of the universe is being pulled into the Abyss, and that's causing.
So explaining it like you're 5. All right. So the Triglavians messed stuff up, and now there's spooky space weather, triangles, hat triangles.
So I want to just point out. I just want to point out that the triangles are not the only ones doing stellar manipulation. All 4 of the empires have their own stellar manipulators, and apparently none of those are causing any problems. No. It's only the triangles.
Empires have never caused problems except for all of the problems they have caused. And this
moving right along. All right. No, but I mean, this is kind of cool.
Well, now you can be friendly with both of them if you shoot drones or drifters enough. But during the invasions, we were on the opposite sides. Yes, and we're still a grr. I'd shake my space fist.
I am for the side of the Empyreans. Anywho,
I am for the baseliners, the common people.
Oh gosh. Well,
we are weapons that were made for war, and we are the worst thing this cluster has to offer.
All right, I pulled another.
We can agree on that.
I pulled another mute, so I was just saying that it's a mute or all. But I was just saying that Ashterothi favors the Triglavians, and Arsia favors Edencom. She's an FC for them, and she did a good job defending Minmatar space with other people. And Ashterothi did a good job of capturing space for the Triglavians. And
capturing Caldari's space, like all of it.
Yeah, and taking it with
them.
The
state is in trouble.
You're welcome. Speaking of the state, the next article.
Yeah.
Interbus launches Yule Festival spaceship safety campaign as passage traffic increases. Jita the Forge. Interbus has launched a spaceship safety campaign with transport traffic set to experience its usual increase during the Yule Festival season. As the largest civilian passenger transportation operation in New Eden, Interbus has special concerns for increased passenger and crew awareness of the typical hazards aboard spaceships large and small. The Interbus safety campaign has taken a lighthearted approach to the topic of safety. With the spaceship safety displays it has distributed using the Spacer Legends of clone blanks coming to life and wreaking havoc aboard ship. These Yule Clones campaign is intended to be eye-catching and highlights the serious subject of ship safety in the unusual manner so as to overcome warning fatigue experienced by many of the relatively hazardous space industrial sectors. In recent news, Concord Project Discovery has reported preliminary success in its efforts to identify and develop treatments for the novel coronaviruses that first broke out in space stations and asteroid colonies during the Triglavian invasions. Believed to be a consequence of increased movement of military personnel and fortification workers during the invasions, the spread of the virus's novel disease has been tracked by Project Discovery for many months. Concord officials have expressed cautious satisfaction with the results from Project Discovery so far. So just to explain what this is, coming up in the next 13 days, we will have special challenges to throw snowballs. And each day, if you complete that challenge, you will get a poster that is of one of the 13 Yule clones. And the Yule clones are basically the Eve universe's version of the real Icelandic legend of the Yule lads, which if you're interested, if you don't know what I'm talking about, just when you're done with this, go to YouTube and just search for Eve Online Yule lads, and there's both good information and good times to be had. Let's just say it that way. In addition, obviously the second half is related to the fact that Project Discovery was shifted over to focus on coronavirus research, and we're all hoping that these vaccines are going to be very impactful. And so this is just the universe reflecting that their developments have been, in parallel with ours.
Cool. All right.
Yeah, they're just tying it to Project Discovery, which is, you're obviously actually helping coronavirus research with Project Discovery. So they tied it to novel coronavirus.
Right. They said that because this was happening during invasions, it was originally everything that happens in game obviously has an in-universe component. So the idea is that there is actually also an ongoing pandemic inside of Eve that has caused the Sisters of Eve and Project Discovery to create this this effort to cure it or to fix it in Eve. It was explicitly noted that is not the Kyanoke plague, for those of you who want to throw that out there.
Yeah, it is something to be noted that every single aspect of your UI that you see is something in character that your character sees. It's called the Neocom. So if you see the agency or Project Discovery, your character sees that too. And just as it is, you don't have to try to make up words for things that you think they'd use, because they use a lot of the same words that we use. So if you're RPing and you see a window, your character would see that window too. Sometimes
things slip in there. I catch modern verbiage.
Well, that's why I don't like on the agency where it says the word player. That is something that really upsets me. And that's a conversation for another time, but that's always been the way it's been. So when I see stuff that is out of place, it does annoy me.
Well, either way, so though that article was mostly, or that issue is mostly about the meta stuff or real life stuff. Moving on. The next one is unrest at Jita 44 moon mining colony as protests overextend working and transit costs flare up. Jita the Forge. Unrest has broken out in Jita 44 moon mining colony as extended working hours and high transit costs for workers has led to protests and isolated riots. Although tempers are already frayed at the deep core mining colony due to invasion-related protests and high-intensity working around the completion of the Caldari Navy Jita 44 Station's core trading hub, many felt that the coming festival season would provide some respite. Consequently, the announced extended hours and travel costs caused an explosion of unrest among workers in the moon colony. The CBD megacorporation Space Lane Patrol has been deployed in force to support its DCM subsidiaries' overstretched colony security forces. Caldari Navy forces have deployed to both ends of the DCM moon space elevator to ensure the security of this vital link between the moon mining colony and the Jita 44 station complex. So this feels like they're setting things into play. As Jita 44's construction continued, unrest through the Caldari state only grew larger, and invasions, as Baleful so kindly pointed out, went very poorly for the state. And so they expended a lot of energy in the construction of Jita 4.4, and at the same time, they weren't able to protect their own citizens. This caused huge problems. And as part of the Jita 4.4 expansion, they did a huge thing where now you can see this big giant mining facility mining into the moon of Jita that wasn't there before. And so now they've put these things there, and I'm not there in Jita right now, but I assume that if you go there right now, you'll see these rats in space. And so it's unclear where this is going to go, but tensions are very, very, very high in the state right now. Last time they've likened it to when Tibus Heth took over. So anything could happen.
You can read that Tibus Heth story in the 2007-2008 book, The Empyrean Age. That's one of the features of that book.
Actually, the Empyrean Age is really, really good at really highlighting what financial instability means to a state like the Caldari that is based on strength and based on, it's like, profit margins and corporations and all that stuff. That's all great when things are going great. But when it's not going great, things collapse real fast. Anywho, so we'll have to keep an eye on Jita 4.4. I think that story is not over yet. So next is going to be the one that RC is going to be most interested. Do you want to read the next one? I don't want to mess up like the words, the names.
I can I can read this one. This one is actually the one that's based on an IGS post that happened recently, and these NPCs that are shown on the image here, they were actually spawned in space by probably CCP Delegate 0 and ran around the system for a while. So sometimes when you see something like this, you'll have a live event with diamond NPCs running around, and sometimes you even get an event actor NPC, like when we had Sesley and the invasion in Skarkon. But Khanid Kingdom deploys troops in Neda system to quell uprisings and piratical opportunists. Neda, Khanid, following Blood Raider attacks and reported slave rebellions, Royal Khanid Navy vessels have taken part in operations in the Neda system, deploying Archaean Marines and units of the 8th and 19th Royal Ulans to Neda 3 and Neda 5. They are Archaean's Neda relief force is under the direct command of Sardar Admiral Mirza ul-Chakade, military governor of the Hormuz system, Khanid Kingdom. Authorities have declared that slave rebellion is not excused by the chaos caused by Blood Raider cultists, blood cultist raids, and piratical opportunism by capsuleers affiliated with other houses. Now, what they mean by capsuleers affiliated with other houses is capsuleers from the alliance Kimi Harar, with the ticker Lumen, which is one of the more significant Amar role-playing alliances that is involved in this story from the IGS boards.
Well, this was also based on the fact that the Blood Raiders were fighting specifically against Sorum forces, right?
Blood Raiders have hit.
During the live event, during the Crimson Harvest event, it was.
Oh yeah, in the more recent Crimson Harvest, it was Sarum versus Blood Raiders. Yes.
Right. That's what I thought that they meant by other houses. Was they were referencing the Sorum.
No, they're talking about Lumen, who bases mostly in the Mandate, and although the Capsuleers and Lumen have all their own affiliations, they're sometimes framed as Artishaper.
Tracking.
Right.
Carry on.
Because they said in the IGS post that they had troops on the ground. So they're referring to basically opportunist troops from the actual player alliance. House Khanid is currently locked in a political struggle with House Artishaper over the state of the Khanid warlord and religious figure Duke Alar Chakade. Alar Chakade is actually an NPC that has bombed several locations that are connected to various player characters, including my own, over slights on like message boards and stuff. So if you ever want your stuff bombed in the news, insult an NPC like Chakade. The Theology Council continues to hear evidence in a case on the Duke Chakade matter. with the latest development being a notion for the Theology Council to take custody over Alar Chakade from the Order of St. Tetramon and move him from Tanu to a neutral location in the heart of the Empire of Holy Amar. This references the fact that Chakade, who was captured by the Tetramon on Flossiswin, is being held on Tanu, the capital planet, Tanu 2, the capital planet of the Amatar Mandate. With the fighting between House Khanid and House Ardo-Shapur, they want Chakade, who is King Khanid's, basically King Khanid's secretary, in layman's terms, to be moved from the Ardo-Shapur world of Tanu to a neutral location, so both houses can deal with the imprisoned Chakade on equal terms.
So, to kind of even begin to understand what's this is actually the opposite of the last one, where the last one seems almost like a precursor of something that's to come. This is actually a story that is just part of an ongoing plot.
So this whole plot goes all the way back to the Amar tournament in 2015. Chakade was the person who decided the potential champions for House Khanid. And one of them happened to be a Blood Raider loyalist called Idioti. And a lot of the Amar role players at the time made a big fuss over it, and they fought with this NPC, Alar Chakade. And he came back a couple of years later, right before Kaha, and started fighting with everybody, and was present around Kaha, and got a bunch of promotions leading up to when he was himself deployed on Flossiswin. When that broke out last year. Near the end of Flossiswin, he was captured by the Tetramon and charged with a lot of high crimes, and he's been being held in Tanu since. So this is a story that's been going on since 2015.
Wow.
Right, and then specifically the Blood Raider connection, Crimson Harvest 3 years ago. When we were mining the special ore that they had, and then that was the first time we ever got chronodynamic carboxyls and had to build the skill accelerators. And that's when we learned that this chronodynamic carboxyls, whatever that is kind of what gets turned into skill accelerators. So it's used to help us be super smart, super fast, or whatever. Well, this is actually refined version of this substance, and if you in an unrefined form, if you give it to normal people and not capsuleers, it is a drug known as Death Glow, which is why the Crimson Harvest skins are called Death Glow Hunters. And so the Blood Raiders were experimenting with Death Glow, both in the creation of skill accelerators, but also they're using it as this hallucinogenic, madness-inducing drug that they can basically distribute via, effectively chemtrails. They just blast it over a town and cause everybody to go crazy. So, what?
So, the thing about the Death Glow that's tied to this is that 2 years ago on this date, the Becca War started, which was a war between a bunch of different alliances in the system of the Becca over a Death Glow attack from the Blood Raiders that caused all the slaves to riot. And some groups are trying to help the slaves resist the Amar, and others were trying to quell the rebellion. And this is the 2-year anniversary of that date, and this bit of this article coming out today is very timely.
Right. So as part of Crimson Harvest, they introduced this concept of Death Glow, and as part of that ongoing story, that same substance, Death Glow, was used by the Blood Raiders in these terrorist attacks during that time on Amarian and specifically Khanid-held planet, that caused this massive Mimitar uprising, which caused Khanid to do this big like overreaction to basically. I think he just like nuked the planet, right?
So
Like
the Conid
pretty
planet
indiscriminate.
was Kaha, was in
Right.
Kaha, and yeah, they basically just used artillery and killed. They committed genocide. The Conid committed genocide. There was a big fight over Kaha when Armas Darkar, who was a traitor Amatar, threatened to invade the planet with a big freighter. NPCs dropped a supercarrier to kill the freighter. Ashra Khan ganked the Concord NPC in the Marshal. So if you ever saw the kill mail of the NPC, it's an actual character, like a normal kill mail. It's a character from Concord who had a Marshal with a small armor repairer being ganked in high sec. That was from that event.
So
Hold
yeah.
on.
So basically,
let me stop you there because we're talking a lot about Minmatar and how their slave colony was interrupted. But let's talk about the relationship between Amar and Minmatar a little bit. How is it that Minmatar came to be enslaved at a certain point? How are they kept there?
All right. So going back a long time to when the Amar and the Minmatar first contact. Basically, the Amar had technological superiority and just attacked and captured the Minmatar, and they were held almost completely, not entirely, but almost completely in slavery for a long time, until the Amar lost a big fight with the Jove, and it created opportunity on a lot of worlds for quite a lot of Minmatar to rebel and form the Minmatar Republic with help from the Jove and the Glende.
Right,
And
so
about half of the empire is still Minmatar, ethnically.
So I think what Matt trying to get to is that the big way that the Amar control their slaves is through this drug called Vitok, right? And so effectively they inflict a permanent debilitating disease on all of the Minmatar slaves, and they say, okay,
not all,
well,
but it is widely used. It's one of the various methods. There's Vitok, there's TCMCs, and then there are other groups that don't, holders that don't use anything,
right?
Because at this point they've been in slavery for decades and decades and decades and decades. So they're kind of born into it, and it's not like grabbing somebody off the street. It's worse, really.
But so it's the classic gambit of like, if you don't come back to me every day for your fix, then you will die a painful and horrible death. So they basically force them to become addicted to this substance, and then they are the only suppliers of that, and that is how they keep the Minmatar in slavery. At least that is one of the main strategies.
Vitok is widely used on slaves that serve somewhere like on a ship crew or something where they could hypothetically have easy access to escape. So it prevents them from doing that.
Right. So the idea is that, these people make the choice to continue to do the right thing because they want to avoid the painful experience. But if you air blast bath salts over an entire community, and they get all tripping out, they're not going to care about their Vitok addiction anymore, and they're just going to start eating people's faces. And that's exactly what happened. And so the use of Deathglow to basically instill madness in order to force Minmatar slaves to rebel became this popular thing during that time. And since this happened in the lore, the various people who have allied themselves, the various players of the game who have allied themselves either with the Minmatar or with the Amar, supported or one side or the other in this struggle, which tripped off this event or this real in-game conflict between these groups, hundreds of people that have now lasted for literally 2 years. And now this lore article is basically just catching up everybody to where we're at right now. So this is a story that's been going on and basically ping-ponging between player action, NPC action, world news, NPC actors, diamond rats, etc. for over 2 years for those who have been involved.
We've had things like Blood Raider, Diamond, NPC Dreadnoughts hitting Fortizars in high sec. We've had things like multi-month wars between various alliances with battles that had over like hundreds of people. It's been a lot of different things with a lot of different ways to interact with, and it's
That being said, we should probably move on to the last one, so that way we can be done before we can actually still talk about the event and have time for everything else.
yes.
So, you want to do this one or should I?
Minmatar Tribal Council reasserts tribal sovereignty over Skarkon, repudiates pro-Triglavian Capsuleer and war clone claims. Pator system. The Minmatar Tribal Council has reasserted the enduring and total sovereignty of the 7 tribes of Matar over the system of Skarkon conquered by the Triglavians, and made a Sarvog clade-controlled system with the newly created Pakvan region. The declaration, also covering the system of Krierald, comes as various Republic loyalist and pro-Triglavian war clone encapsulator groups make claims and counterclaims over the status of Skarkon and territories within it. Following a meeting of Tribal Council San Matar, Malitu Shakur said, "It is plain enough to anyone who is actually loyal to the Matari people that the lands of Skarkon too are tribal lands in perpetuity. No claims based on spurious Amar-style arguments merit a moment's consideration. Outsiders and fallen kin may try to cook up a petty meal of persuasion by finely chopping words and logic, but Matari know there is no true moot feast for any tribe or clan that can be found in such dressed-up pap. The Minmatar Republic considers all territories of Skarkon's system to fall under the direct jurisdiction of the Skarkon Tribal Resistance Army commanded by Valkynier General Krill Ifrit as sole lawful authority representing the Council of 7 Tribes of Matar. The Thucker tribe has also confirmed that various territorial leases of its tribal lands on Skarkon II were automatically terminated when the acts of terror and war were made against the lawful government of Skarkon II. The Skarkon Tribal Resistance Army continues to defy Triglavian invaders on Skarkon II, with a number of missile strikes carried out against the Sarvog clade and pro-Triglavian war clone positions in recent weeks. Additionally, the STRA members have been bolstered by reinforcements of volunteers from the Republic Armed Forces and Minmatar paramilitary groups, despite resistance efforts. Reports from Edencom briefings indicate Sarvog forces continue to hold population centers of Skarkon II and are slowly expanding their zones of control across the planet. So this references a Capsuleer corporation that lives in Skarkon that calls themselves, that identifies as war clones, and Krill Ifrit is an NPC who was tasked to clean up an angel outbreak on Skarkon before it was captured by the Triglavians, and he's been tasked with cleaning up the system for some time now.
Of all of the systems that was taken by the Triglavians, Niarja may have been the most impactful to us players, but Skarkon is by far the most impactful to the universe as far as Veil's up there, but Skarkon is a important system in the Empyrean Age. It has been important to the Minmatar for various reasons for quite some time. It's been contested. It's part of the war zone, and they actually had been building up one of these kind of B plots that grow over the years that you see. One of them was building up in Skarkon, and then suddenly, whoop! Skarkon's now invaded, and oh my God, it's now final liminality. Now what? So this is actually one of the interesting ones, because as Poshvin continues to develop, this is the kind of place where it's like if Edencom is going to make a strike, they might make it here. It might be worth watching Skarkon as a system inside of Poshvin versus other systems. It's hard to say where this is going to go, but I can tell you for an absolute fact that Delegate Zero and everyone else that was paying attention to the story took high note of the taking of Skarkon.
So when Skarkon was being invaded for the second time, and then after it fell final liminality, there were event NPCs in Skarkon and Diamond Rats in Skarkon. Delegate Zero is very interested. It's it's been a war zone. It's not part of the faction warfare war zone, but it's been a war zone for years and years and years. Skarkon is basically a place that can never catch a break, and falling to the Triglavians is just par for the course for this system that can't catch a break.
I guess I just assumed it was part of the war zone just because of how many times it comes. That's awesome.
It's
Molten Heath is also super important because Molten Heath is where Dust 514 took place, and so a lot of that stuff with like the aftermath of Dust 514 kind of echoes in Molten Heath. It's going to be a place to watch as time goes on.
Yeah, it's not part of the faction warfare zone. It is a war zone, though.
It is. All right. So then finally we have in other news, widespread anti-CEP riots on Hajin 8 dispersed by Big 8 corporate security forces from barracks across system. Space Lane patrols.
CEP has killed our executive panel.
Correct. Space Lane Patrol pursues leads pointing to Garissa's involvement in multi-million ISK heist from Unpus Mercantile Club Art Gallery. Death toll over 500 in gang war between Angel Cartel and Cruel Organization in Inner 6, rival groups bolstered by Skarkon gang members. Serpentis Corporation denies involvement in assassination of federal drug enforcement officers in Octavin system. Yeah, okay. Intaki Space Police with new talks with Intaki Assembly as Mordu Legion signals intention to resume of paused withdrawal from Intaki system. Federation Supreme Court to hear arguments in case against Federation Navy and Edencom conduct of Vale blockade during Triglavian occupation. Mimitar Galente trade balance report indicates a reduction of Mimitar Republic trade deficit with Federation driven by raw material exports. Concord conflict monitors assess House Sora military as, quote, potentially ready to launch new invasion of Floswin 4 in the new year. Breaking. Breaking. Royal Khanid Navy indiscriminately bombards Blood Raider, quote, rebel slaves and renegade paramilitary positions in Neta 3 and 5. Breaking. Royal Ulan's armor brigades land in force in capital cities of Neta 3 and 5. RKN directive to, quote, restore order by any means necessary, end quote.
Why did you sigh when they were talking about Flossiswin? Tell us about Flossiswin.
All right, so Flossiswin was a big fight in the faction warfare, the Amar Minmatar faction warfare zone that was kicked off about a year ago after an NPC responded to a ship toast that I made on the IGS forums. And I didn't really even participate in it, but it was just months and months and months.
Did you just say ship toast?
Ship toast. It was definitely a ship toast. And
nice way to say it.
But basically, an NPC responded to the militias made an agreement with one another. The Amar and the Minmatar militias made an agreement with one another to give up the systems to the other militia that had the mission NPCs in them, because they wanted to kill off the farmers who they didn't like. I made a post at the time, still as an Amar loyalist, basically calling it out as treason, and then there was a big thread about it, and NPCs responded with one of the NPCs saying, as a response to this, they call for a complete reclaiming of the planet of Flossiswin 4, which means the Amar were going to start slaving in the war zone, which is not something that has been done for quite a while. They attempted to do it years and years and years ago, and it was struck down by Concord when Murameth and Katiz, who is now the current Empress, by the way, wanted to slave in the war zone. But under some loophole or something, Arxerum basically started actively slaving on the planet of Flossiswin 4. So all the Minmatar players came and fought really hard to take Flossiswin. The Amar militia came and they fought them. And it was just this 6-month battle of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions of ISK of stuff destroyed. Numbers you wouldn't even believe out of faction warfare.
All wild. All right, so that's the news. As you can see, we read it all to you and then described some background and some context. If you have more questions, you can find Arsia or Ashterothi on Talking in Stations Discord or wherever they stream. And go ahead.
I hope that people like this. If this is the kind of thing, because these world news come out every once in a while, and I would like to do this for you guys and bring it because I feel like this is part of the news. This is a news show, so if you agree, please give us some feedback so that way we know that this is the kind of thing that people like.
Right. So let's move on. We have about 15 minutes left. Should we talk about the Winter Nexus or the Bloodlines bug next?
I think that the Bloodlines bug is probably going to be shorter, and we can just get that out of the way, and then we can just talk about winter stuff until we're done.
Too. So we have to. Okay. So can you? I'll bring up some images, but can you tell us what the bug was?
So, if you ever have looked at somebody's portrait, character's portrait, and you notice at the bottom there's a show full body button. Well, right now there is a bug where if you look at the full body picture, full body image of another capsuleer, they show up as the race that your character is. So if you are an Amar character and you look at a Galende character, they will show up. They'll look like their character, but they will show up as an Amar, right? Like, see, like all these images here are all Arsia Elkin being looked at. My character, Arsia Elkin, being looked at from other characters. So that's Arsia being looked at by a Brutor, the one on screen now.
Lovely.
If you flip it to another, no, she looks real nice. Like, she looks nice in all of them. She looks good no matter what. But that's a Sebiester looking at Arsia. But right now, if you ever wanted to see what your character looked like as another bloodline, you have a chance to do so right now by having another character look at your character. That's Jin Mei Arsia.
So to explain this a little bit better, like each of the bloodlines, like there's kind of an Asian-y, as it were, character and a European or whatever for each of the races usually, right? There's one more what is it? Eastern Europe. I don't even know the actual formal. What is the polite? Gosh darn it! I'm going to get in trouble. Either way,
Eastern European.
There's different. You can tell like there's different physical traits with the face based on the bloodline. Is that what you're talking about?
Each empire has 3 bloodlines associated with it that all have different features that correspond to races of people. So like the Jin Mei are heavily based off of like maybe Japanese or Chinese people, whereas like True Amar are like they're kind of like a mix of like Europeans and like Persians, right?
So the reason why I specifically brought up Asian is because in the early days they actually came out with one of the expansions. The feature was that each of the 4 races got a Asian bloodline added to it. So every single one of the 4 empires have 2 non-Asian races and 1 Asian, or 2 non-Asian bloodlines and 1 Asian bloodline.
The Bloodlines expansion.
Yep.
Yeah, so like the Minmatar had Verokir got Verokir at the time.
Yeah.
For example.
So yeah, weird visual bug. To me, it's just an indication that they continue to tinker around with this stuff, which is interesting. But I guess we're just going to have to see what it means when we get to there. So winter event.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we did talk about a lot of the details of the winter event over the last couple of days, which you can see all of those VODs and whatnot on YouTube and on Twitch. But I wanted to share at least our experience a little bit with what we did. What I ended up getting a 10-man low-sec filament. The low-sec is the best of the sites. We actually only were able to bring out, we had 8 people originally, but one person didn't end up getting there on time. And then one of them, it was kind of funny since he was just messing around. He already had a timer. He had a combat timer, so we couldn't yeet with him. But then the other guy, we were in a Mars space, and he was a Galente faction warfare guy, so we had to go. So we had like literally the Galente or the Amar Navy spawn and started killing our dude. And so I had to kick him out of the fleet really quick, and then yeet the rest of the fleet to save the dude's Brutix. But either way, we yeeted into low sec with a Brutix, 2 Myrmidons, a Drake, a Stratios, and a Skiff. And we ended up in New Eden, which was kind of an interesting place to end up. Unfortunately, it meant that there wasn't a lot of systems connected to it because it's a dead end. But even still, there was tons of sites. We never didn't have things to do. The sites were very, very valuable. Like very frequently, we were getting upwards of 50 to 150 million per site for the combat side. I know that the mining guy got in less than 2 hours. He got over 250 million ISK worth of loot just from the mining site. I got at least 200 to 300 million ISK worth of loot and stuff from the hacking sites during that time, and we killed a Praxis. So, and then the cool thing is that as you do the sites, one of the things that drops very frequently from the combat sites, I noticed that the hacking sites mostly gave me null-sec filaments. That might have been coincidence, but the combat sites mostly gave people high-sec filaments, and they give you one-man high-sec filament. So one of the interesting things was, like, we yeeted out a bunch of people with like a 10-man filament, and then as time went on, people, like when people were done, they were able to take one of the one-man filaments and just yeet back into high sec, and then they were just done. Like, we didn't have to worry about any of the logistics. Normally when you go out, it's like everybody kind of has to stick together because you have one path home. This actually makes it so that you actually get paths home as you're running the sites, which is pretty convenient. So I watched CCP did a stream where they did it, and I saw that they were doing it in Tech 1 cruisers. So as long as you have like 4 or 5 people, most of the sites can be ran in even Tech 1 cruisers or assault frigates. There's lots of good opportunities for all 3: mining, hacking, and combat. The CCP Fozzie, one of the things I caught out of that was that he said that because it's Christmas, they wanted this to be more rewarding. So if you want to do events for rewards, now is the time to do it. This is going to be almost a month, and the sites are, most of the reward in these sites are from Overseer's effects. And since Overseer's effects are purchased by NPC buy orders in any Concord or DED station, that means that this isn't like older event sites where it's like after the first day or two, all of the economics crash because now it's, whatever the new item is supplied or whatever it is. Like, no, because it's NPC buy orders. When you open it up and there's 120 million ISK Overseer effect in there, that's yours. So, the other big hint about that, though, is that the Overseer effects are very clunky. So in particular, if you're mining, what you do is you actually mine up the ice that are in the belts and then turn them into the Orca. If you ever did Resource Wars or something like that, you open up the Orca like it was an inventory thing, and then it like has a little UI that allows you to turn in 7 ice, and you get a little lockbox that you can open up for some random salvage and treasure and Overseer effects and stuff. But the thing is that those lockboxes are 0.1 M3, and the Overseer effects are significantly bigger. So if you're going to be out there for a while, don't open up your boxes. Keep everything small so that way you can continue to maneuver. And then finally, the last tip that I have for people is if you are interested in doing mining, the ice mining sites and the exploration sites with a single ship, the best that we've been able to find so far is the Endurance.
Endurance.
I don't like how you can't like drop mining missions, the missions or quests or dailies or whatever you want to call them. If you have a character that can't mine, like I can't fly a Venture on Arsia because she was created before the mining frigate existed, right?
Well, the good news is it doesn't take that long to train it.
I don't want to inject it because I am one of the few characters that doesn't have mining frigate that still exists, because I give it to everybody these days, and I like not having it because it's like a badge of honor that I'm old.
Well, so industrial, if you can just fly in a T1 industrial hauler,
isn't it?
Or something like that.
Isn't it ice though?
Right, but you just have to be the one that turns it in. Somebody else can mine it. Like I actually was mining.
Oh, that's that changes everything.
And actually, the way it works is that the belt is about 40 kilometers away from the orca in a ring. So the optimal way to do it is to have ice miners in the belts mining the ice, and you get credit and points for mining the ice. But then you can just jettison it, and then like a porpoise that's sitting next to the orca tractors them in and then turns them in. If you really want to be efficient and loot up all of the ice out of a belt, that would be the way to do it. Because there's two processes. There's the act of mining the ice, and then there's the act of turning in the ice.
That makes sense. So, yeah.
And so, like, I actually got one of my tasks last night was to mine 60 ice. And yeah, I actually had to train ice mining skills to be able to do it with Ash. But it didn't take very long. I just was able to do it in HiSec. But it was worth 60 points.
But
so
you can
they
have
actually
somebody else mine it for you and turn it in.
No, well, I had to. It was to mine that much ice. Mine 60 units of ice.
So my problem still stands then, right? So
if depending on the task, is because some tasks involve turning it in, some tasks
but
involve
you'll eventually get a task you can't do if that's the case.
Can't you just put an ice miner on like an industrial hauler and then just?
I think you can only put an ice miner on barges.
I'm not sure.
I think ice miners can only be on barges or like the Endurance, right?
Right.
Orcas cannot go into the site. Porpoises can.
The ice turrets only work on barges, right?
I think so.
Yeah, they don't work on typical any other ship.
Is there anything that fits in there that can use a single ice drone?
I don't know, but the good news is that we do have a long time to do it. I think that the tasks reset, and I also had one like that's the thing. If you start doing these tasks, the later ones can be worth a lot of points. Like I did. Basically, I was able to complete 3 HiSec sites and got a grand total of like 80 points because of tasks to destroy a battleship, tasks to destroy 3 battleships. I had a task to destroy 3 battleships that were worth 40 points. Complete a site worth 10 points. Complete a site worth 10 points. And whatever. So I think you could probably still do it without engaging in the mining stuff, but you're gonna have to find a workaround one way or another.
Alphas can't mine ice either, right? So
right. Well, that's the thing. Like you can't engage with every opportunity.
But they don't go away on downtime. They didn't yesterday.
Do they? Interesting. So you're saying that somebody's just going to pile up until they have all tasks that they can't do?
Right.
CCP Fozzie said that that's the reason why they gave 4 tasks, so that way there would kind of always be something. So I think it hits that point, that would be something that they'd be unhappy with. So we'll have to see how it plays out.
I'm almost to that point. I have like 3 mining tasks.
Well, the only thing is that, like I said, we've got a long, like this event is a long time, so they even have some time to adjust things midway if they need to.
It bears repeating, though, that the reason you're going to be stuck, Arsia, is because as a sign of decisions made in the past, you have
right. But what if I was an alpha? Are you saying alphas shouldn't be able to do the event at all? I'm an omega, obviously, but alphas cannot mine ice. So an alpha would have the same exact problem I have.
Alphas.
I do. So I agree that this particular task seems like if you can wedge it to that, then there should be some sort of fix because it is blocked behind omega.
Mm-hmm. Well, to finish the point, though, I think it's really interesting because this talks a lot about the psyche of the player of EVE Online. Like if you're really into this game, you look and want to groom yourself to have certain markers. And Arsia plucked one out, which is I can that I'm an old ancient character because I don't have the mining skill, which is given to everybody else.
The mining frigate skill.
Right.
Yeah. I mined a tormentor when it was a mining frigate.
So somebody else could identify her as pre-alpha clones, for instance, and that is a badge of honor. It's like it's an interesting way of looking at it. There's a couple of things, just to go on a little tangent here, where EVE players mark themselves. One is, what was your start date, right? And that's how they kind of measure up, when you started, what era, how long have you been playing this game? Like, when were you into this band? When they were a small band or when they became popular? The other thing is, not that Eve ever became super popular. The other thing is your PvP kill board. Like, well, yeah, what's your kill board stats? Otherwise, but we know that can be totally gimmicked. But
don't even talk to me until you've whelped 200 harbingers. Like,
oh gosh. Okay. Well, so speaking
that's
of
the
which,
language of comparison in EVE Online. Anyway, go ahead.
Speaking of which, one of the things that they did in this event is exactly that. So what the points that we are accumulating, as you can see on my screen right now, This track is basically a whole bunch of what it is it's 13 new Aurora Universalis skins for the Capsule, Abaddon, Roke, Hyperion, Maelstrom, Crusader, Raptor, Tyrannus, Claw, Heretic, Flycatcher, Eris, and Saber. And when you use these, and there, we could go into the reasons why it's these skins, but we're not going to right now. But when you get them, they are one of those skins that redeem to you automatically when you complete it, which means the only way for someone to get this Saber Aurora Universalis skin is to complete this track. And it could be possible that this could be this year only. Next year, there could be a different set of skins, and they may introduce some other way to get this specific skin. But until they do, the only way to have this skin apply to your ship is to complete this task this year.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it sucks because I want the Dictor ones, but they're like the last ones, and I keep getting the binding tasks. I got my shiny Abaddon. I wanted that. But
what I hear is that EVE Online is putting tension on a player to make a decision about what is more important to her.
Not flying Avenger.
I look forward to hearing your exploits for the rest of Yule, and whether or not you make it to your Saber.
Yeah. And Plague says, it's amazing how long people play and stick with EVE Online.
Any skin that lets me remove the Conid logo from the Heretic is a good skin.
I feel that way. So actually, it's funny that you say that, because I have my Ikitursa on right now, and I said that originally about the skin I got, the Singularity Storm skin for the Ikitursa. I actually bought it because it turned the Caldari State logo into a different logo, and then they changed it. Now it doesn't do it anymore. It still stays the Caldari State logo. I feel cheated.
You got bamboozled.
It's one of those bug fixes that actually destroys something that you had relied on.
Varari makes a good point. I have the permaban skin for the Saber, but
that's true.
I need the Heretic skin. All right.
It made me so mad I had to take Nyarja. All right. Anyway, I think that might be all of the news that I got for you guys.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Arsia, do you have anything else that you want to mention?
Can I plug the RP stream? Because a lot of people see the RP.
Oh, absolutely.
Discord.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
A lot of people seem to like the lore.
And I also, are you going to post it in the chat, or do you want to?
Yeah, I'm going to post it in the chat.
I'll grab it.
And in addition to that, I also wanted to pimp out, in this time of increased metaliminal storms, it is now harder than ever to keep track of the original metaliminal storms, since it's hard to tell the difference on the maps. So if you go to evescoutrescue.com/home/stormtrack.php, they keep diligent track of where all of the standard metaliminal storms are. So that way you can look for opportunities and dangers coming.
All right, so what Arsia, you'll see there as Baleful, was plugging there is a Discord for role-playing. So check that out. It's in there, and we'll put it in the show notes too, so I'll move that over here. I'll even put it in today's newspaper. Today's paper. All right.
That's right. Let's actually drill in on that a little bit. So how often do you put out that newspaper now?
It's a daily, so every day, except the weekend, right? Because newspapers have, I think daily newspapers are Monday through Friday, and then they have a weekend edition, and we kind of have the same thing.
Right. So, in case you haven't known, this guy, on top of everything else he does, goes through all of the effort to pull through everything that's been talked about and summarize it on a daily basis and send out a news post to you guys, to anybody who's interested. And the only thing he asks for is for you to just sub and care about it. So
to distribute
how
it to your
does
friends.
one and tell other people how cool it is. So tell other people how to get involved in this newsletter.
I'll tell you what, EVE players always surprise me because I distributed the first few papers, and then I think it was actually the very first one. I sent it out and I hear it, ding, somebody donated money to you. And I thought, oh, all right, somebody donated $1 million or something. And I look and it was 4 ISK 0.99. So it's like
awesome.
Yeah, I couldn't stop.
$4.99. That's what it's worth. No, seriously though. But like, what is the name exactly? How do you subscribe to a newsletter in Eve?
Oh, well, yeah, this is kind of it. I can't show the game right now. Maybe you can, but the
Sure.
mail window, if you open it at the bottom left of a column, right, you'll have your inbox, messages you sent, and all that stuff. And then at the very bottom is a button called Add Mailing List. And I don't know if you noticed, but when your corporation sends mail to you, that's a mailing list. If your alliance sends mail, can you do that? That's a mailing list. So you can create your own mailing list in this game. And I think it caps out at, I want to say 3,000 players. I think that's the cap. And what you can do is you can call it anything you want. It's just like a channel. So what we did is we created TIS News. That's TIS, then a space, and then News. And so when you hit that button to add a mailing list, you write in TIS News, and you're on our mailing list. So every time I write an email to that mailing list, it distributes to all the people that are in that mailing list. So right now we have about 500 to 600 people on that list. Thanks for
That's 500 to 600 people that know more about Eve on a daily basis than you do. And the only way that you can know as much as those other people is to join the mailing list TIS News, TIS space news in game. That's it. That's all you got to do. You don't even have to send $4.99 to Matterall, although you can if you want to.
Please don't, because that joke is not funny anymore, and I'll have 1,000 $4.99s in my
well, then send it to me. I want it. Fine, whatever. I'll take it for you.
Yeah, but yeah, it's free. So just distribute it to your friends. Tell your court mates if they want to know what's going on. It's just an easy way to get a piece of email 5 days a week. And I just gave some instructions on how to get there. And the other thing that's really cool about this, and this is what we try to emphasize because we want to bring the news into the game, not pull you out of the game to get your news, is to link everything in the newsletter. So if we're talking about a place, like a system, we'll actually link it if we can. If we're talking about an item, we'll actually link it. And that way you start to get player context on the actual in-game items, in-game places, even in-game characters. If somebody's notable that you may not have heard of, we'll link you to their profile. As they come up, you can see their corporation history. And that kind of puts you into EVE Online, which I really, really like. There's no way to do that outside of the game. You have to be in the game to do that. All right. Thanks, Ash, for bringing that up. I forgot. Okay, one more announcement. We're coming up on the holidays, so expect some special stuff coming from Talking in Stations. We do have the end of the year after the holiday, so we'll be talking about the most influential categories of player and organization, and we might make up some new stuff this year where we look back at the entire year and figure out like who made a huge difference in this game at a high level, and we're not talking just people involved. We're talking about smaller groups as well. So we'll check all that out coming out this weekend. We'll also do a review of the year so you can kind of get a whole narrative on what the year looked like as far as warfare and player activities and stuff like that. What players did in this game is what we specialize in because CCP can't do that. It's up to us to narrate ourselves. Okay.
You mean we're not going to do a 5-hour megathon where we talk about the last decade?
We might do that. You got the right sweater for it. Yeah. Last year, Ash and I sat down and talked about the economy, and it just wove into this whole decade long, 4 or 5 hours we talked about.
I kind of want to go back and like watch it this year and do like commentary.
Get prepped.
Like throw on a Yule log.
Yeah. I think we talked for like 4 hours about the whole decade, and we talked about what each year did and all that other stuff. So yeah, it was quite a we had a great time before we knew it was over, and then we found out, wow, it was long, but people really responded to it, which is cool. Okay, thanks Arsia so much, and Ashterothi too. Really appreciate it. Arsia, we'll see you on Sunday. We're now going to go to Open Comms and send you there. Have a good Friday, and enjoy your weekend.